Veterans and world leaders are in Normandy, France to mark the 75th anniversary of D-Day, the battle that helped lead to victory in World War II. CBS's Ian Lee has more on the service marking that historic day.
75 years later, the guns over Omaha Beach rang out in remembrance. On June 6, 1944, they were fired in hate. Thousands gathered at the American Cemetery in Normandy, France to honor the sacrifices made on that fateful day.
On this day, 75 years ago, 10,000 men shed their blood and thousands sacrificed their lives for their brothers, for their countries, and for the survival of liberty.
More than 150 D-Day veterans returned to the shores to be with their comrades, including 96-year-old vet Jake Larson, who says Omaha Beach today looks dramatically different.
The sea here is clear. It was bloody bodies. What can a person say now, except that war is hell?
Nous vous faisons chevalier.
French President Emmanuel Macron presented a number of U.S. veterans with the Legion of Honor, France's highest award.
We know what we owe to you veterans, our freedom. On behalf of my nation, I just want to say thank you.
The ceremony concluded with several flyby salutes. This will likely be the last time so many veterans will gather, so the 9,388 headstones stand as an eternal reminder of the sacrifice. Ian Lee, CBS News.
And each of those headstones Ian was talking about has been adopted by a French family. People come from all over France to look after America's boys. One of Montana's very own was present at today's ceremony. Bud LeCount Billings was sitting right behind President Trump while he spoke at the American Cemetery in Normandy. Wearing a brown blazer, sunglasses, and World War II veteran hat, LeCount joined several other veterans in the front row. He was one of the men who made it back home from Normandy, and you can hear his story tonight during your local MTN 10 o'clock newscast. And a piece of history close to our hearts back here at home. Miss Montana took flight over Omaha Beach this morning. It's one of 12 planes to participate in the presidential flyover that make up the D-Day squadron. Through this whole journey, the C-47 has carried a Montana state flag signed by the hundreds of volunteers who made the flight happen. The planes have spent the past couple of days doing practice jumps. Miss Montana was the 6th plane in formation on Wednesday, dropping its paratroopers, including a number of Montana smoke jumpers. Thousands of people gazed up into the cloudy evening skies to watch the amazing sight. Instead of death and darkness this time, 75 years later, thousands cheered. There were hundreds of military members from Montana who played a part in the Allied invasion of Normandy, some who never came home again. MTN's Russ Riesinger helps tell the story of one paratrooper from Laurel who lost his life during the invasion, but not before saving the lives of other American soldiers.
And then one day I didn't have nothing to do, and I dug it out and started going through it all and was pretty amazed.
It was about 5 years ago that Dan Couts first took a good look inside an envelope that his father had passed on to him, and it took him straight back to 1944.
And of course, that was a time period where you didn't talk about it.
The papers inside, including the dreaded Western Union telegram, alerting the family that Couts' uncle, Private Henry Couts of Laurel, had been killed in action in France. Couts was one of thousands of 101st Airborne paratroopers who landed in Normandy on D-Day. The family didn't find out about his death until a month after it happened and didn't learn the details until that fall when they received a letter from the private's commanding officer.
He parachuted in on D-Day, and their plane was off track a little bit, so of course when they parachuted in, they were off track.
The group spent 3 days trying to fight their way back to the rest of their unit, taking some German prisoners in the process when they again came under fire.
And my uncle was trying to use them as a shield to get the other men by, and it did work. It got the other men by, but then my uncle was killed.
The letter goes on to say that Private Couts died a soldier's death and that his company would always honor his memory.
course, he received a Purple Heart because anybody wounded or passing away receives that. The one thing that I thought he should have had was at least a Bronze Star or more because of what he'd done. He saved these other guys, risking his life, you know, and got them through.
Private Henry Kautz, just one of the many unsung American heroes who gave their all when the fate of the world hung in the balance.
And that was Russ Riesinger reporting. Ed, so many interesting stories coming forward this day. Just can't get enough of them. Makes your appreciation even deeper on what happened this day 75 years ago.
Absolutely does. And there's so many heroes that we're hearing from, and their stories are just being told now. Let's take a look. First off, I want to talk about the possibility of strong to severe storms later in the day. I'm going to mention that now, but looking up into the mountains, we're starting to look at northern Montana, really starting to lose a lot of the snow that's up into the mountains where it's much higher than average, especially as we look into southern Montana, northern Wyoming. There is the possibility, in fact, a strong likelihood we're going to pick up more mountain snow. Here we are in the first week of June, and we're still talking about snow showers, and that's going to influence the areas mainly where we do have the higher snow totals right now. We'll take a closer look at all the details of this incoming system in a few minutes.
Thank you so much, Ed. A state district judge sided with Governor Bullock Wednesday in a dispute with Secretary of State Corey Stapleton over a governor's veto. After a brief hearing in a Helena courtroom, Judge Mike McMahon said Stapleton had no legal authority to overrule the governor's veto of a bill on the definition of wild bison in Montana. The judge blocked Stapleton's action taken last month to declare the bill law and said notice of the veto should be sent to state lawmakers. McMahon's ruling isn't the final word on the case, but he indicated he won't change his mind after more written arguments are submitted. Montana Attorney General Tim Fox has announced the appointment of 11 members to the newly created Missing Indigenous Persons Task Force. The task force was created during the recent meeting of the legislature. It includes a representative from each of Montana's tribes and 3 state representatives. The task force will hold its first meeting on June 11th in Helena. Well, we have more news ahead on this Thursday. The U.S. and Mexico will meet again today for talks on immigration, but President Trump says the progress just isn't enough. The time is 12:07. Stay with us.